Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining me this week on Newsmakers. Our focus this week is focusing on, of course, COVID-19, wearing the mask. And joining me, Darren Fullerton. And I think we'll start off by, we can take the masks off because we're socially distanced here, but Missouri Southern does have the mask program now and tying into what's happening. So, Darren, today I'd like to talk a little bit about everything that's happening on campus and what's coming up as well. So, thank you for being here. So,
thanks for having me.
As Vice President for Student Affairs, I know you've been involved since the beginning when things started happening with the pandemic. Just backtrack a little bit about the task force and how Missouri Southern started putting plans in place last spring, winter.
Absolutely. We've actually had two different groups. We had an original task force that made the initial transition because we had less than a week during spring break to transition from face-to-face classes to online. And so that had a smaller group of individuals. For the reopening for the fall, we started out with an 18-member task force to make plans for a safe face-to-face reopening in the fall semester. That has grown to upper 20s, almost 30 different individuals. We have administrators, faculty, staff, Student Senate has a representative on there, the Board of Governors have a representative. And so there are a lot of people that have a seat at the table, but then there are also about 10 subcommittees of that committee that are also working on that. So a large number of people across campus that are involved in making sure that we have a safe reopening for the fall semester for our students.
So a lot of pieces have to fall in place, and as you say, the students having input, the faculty, and the staff who are here throughout the summer, everybody trying to have input and trying to develop this plan.
Absolutely, and as you know, it's a very fluid situation because things are changing daily almost, and so we rely on guidance from the Center for Disease Control, Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, and then of course the Joplin Health Department. And we're in daily, multiple times a day, communication with the Joplin Health Department. And so we utilize their guidance as well as the best practices nationwide to try to come up with the things that we're doing on campus for the reopening.
Right. So coordination on campus as well as off campus and so forth. Well, let's go back. We mentioned at the beginning of the program the mask policy. So people are saying, well, what's happening Missouri Southern requiring masks? You know, what's the status of that?
Absolutely. One of the best practices across the country right now to help in the prevention or the mitigation for COVID is to wear a face mask. And the face mask prevents others from us. And so Missouri Southern, not only the task force, but the Board of Governors strongly endorsed the policy of wearing masks. We know that when we have students coming back to campus, we want to make sure that we're taking as many precautions as possible, and that was the number one precaution from the Center for Disease Control, as well as the social distancing and then the disinfecting and sanitizing on the surfaces.
People have questions, when do we have to wear masks, or the students are coming in, do I have to have them all the time? What places do I have to wear them? What are some of the answers?
The easiest way, and we do have a mask policy up that is a very detailed policy, and I know you're going to make a reference to our webpage. They can just go to MSSU.edu, and the COVID link is right at the top, and they can get all of our information there. The easiest way to look at the mask policy is if you are outdoors and able to social distance, then you do not need to have the mask on. Other than that, most likely you will need to have the mask on. Mask will be required in classrooms. For the classroom settings, we are using social distancing, but we're not able to do the 6 feet totally in every classroom. And so we're doing a 50% capacity. So if a normal class is 30, then that class will now be 15. And so we will be social distancing. We are buying some shields or plexiglass for the professors as well. There will also be face shields, which are the plastic clear face masks for the faculty in those settings. That way, if we have students that are hearing impaired, or just if it's a larger room, to be able to hear them at the back of the room, that will enhance their teaching.
I know from experience of people wearing the mask, some people like to see lips to understand, and so by having the face shields for the faculty, they're going to be able to see the expressions on the face of the faculty member and read, lips.
Absolutely. And we've had students emailing us already that they are having a hard time, or they're in an area that doesn't have a supply of masks or those sort of things. Missouri Southern has ordered 10,000 masks, and we'll be giving each student, faculty, staff member 2 masks, cloth face masks for the fall semester. And so they'll need to look when they come on campus and those first few days of class, we'll have distribution stations set out around campus to hand those out.
Great. Great, so that'll be publicized and people will
Absolutely.
You mentioned the social distancing aspect, of course, in the classrooms. I mentioned some people think, well, we're walking down the hallway. Some of them, there's large groups walking in and out of buildings, and are those concerns being addressed?
You know, in the old days, it was kind of like right hand, right rail. If you walked on the right side, then the others would walk on, and it's almost, we're getting back to that. That's what we are encouraging. We do want social distancing in the classroom.
Right.
If you think of the past years in a normal time, because there are so many back-to-back classes, you have the students leaving this class, students coming in, crossing paths. So we do want to try to set up traffic patterns, and so we'll have some signage on the doors. We are encouraging students, many of our students will arrive 15, 20 minutes early and try to come to class. If it's nice weather, we're going to encourage the students to stay outside until it's closer time to come to your class, just to try to limit that exposure and limit the number of people that are in the building at any given time.
Now, when it comes to the sanitizing of those classrooms, some people are wondering, well, you're going to have students, and then 10 minutes later, you have another group of students coming in. What are you looking at for that?
Yeah, our physical plan, and we have to give a shout out to them. They've done a great job of helping us prepare. I mean, they are disinfecting now, but then they will do heavy cleaning and disinfecting every day. In between classes, there will be some sanitary supplies, some disinfectants in the classroom, and more than likely we're going to ask everyone to help us participate in that. We don't have time, because some of the classes are back-to-back, to get custodial staff in there. So we're looking at some spray and then some wipes that someone can just grab a wipe and wipe their own area down like a disinfectant and then throw those away. So physical plant's working on that for us, so that we know that every individual on campus, whether you're a student or faculty staff member, we all will play a role in keeping each other safe, and masks are one, disinfecting is one, and social distancing.
I noticed when we came back to work in, was it May, that they had the disinfectant, the sanitizer hanging on the walls. That was something that was waiting already for just the staff coming back to campus.
Absolutely. Right now, I think we're over 200 hand sanitizing stations that are distributed around campus, close to the entrances of the buildings and close to classrooms and those sort of things. And so we definitely want to make sure that people are taking advantage of those.
Right, so use those and they're available to use. So students, I imagine they're getting ready to come to campus. Your area with student affairs, getting questions from students. What are some of the common questions that you're hearing right now?
A lot of questions about what's going on in the classroom, and some students are preferring to take online classes versus face-to-face. We're getting questions about the registered student groups and Greek life and those sort of things, as well as a number of campus activities. Are they going to still happen? The answer is yes. We are going to try to provide as close to normal student experience as possible, knowing that it will be very different. For registered student organizations, we have not put a limit or a cease on those groups. We are still allowing them to meet. Student activities will be working with the registered student groups. They may be asked to move to a different location that can accommodate larger spaces.
Be in a bigger classroom instead of that small classroom.
Absolutely, because we do want to encourage social distancing. Some of the activities will have to be modified. Our community day, where we have 130 vendors and several thousand students, faculty, and staff on the Oval at one time, just couldn't happen in that format.
Too big of a group.
So Career Services is looking at a virtual format where those vendors could still advertise and maybe offer discounts to our students and still get that information out to the students when they're coming to campus. Greek Life will still be meeting, and again, there'll be social distancing, and so
still be having new member recruitment.
Absolutely. So we still want students to have that quality experience. It may just look a little bit different than what it has in the past.
Having to adapt to the situation.
Absolutely.
Well, we do have a percentage of students who live on campus as well.
Yes.
A lot of commuters, but so the residence halls may be an area that people are curious about as well.
Absolutely, and we do have reduced capacity in the residence halls. Our capacity is a little over 900 if we're at total capacity. More than likely we'll be in the 600, 700 probably max range. In our traditional men's and women's dorms, we have a lot of spaces where that is the traditional 2 people per room, restrooms down the hall.
Right.
We are trying to minimize that so that there's 1 person per room so that they have fewer roommates. There will be, and the question has came up several times, will there be roommates at all in the residence halls? And there will. Our quads, we have 4 bedroom, 4 bath, and so they have their own bedroom and bath, and so it's almost like isolating in their space. But we will be having some different accommodations. We're keeping at least one of the apartments that we have offline for isolation and quarantine if it's necessary for students that either have been exposed or think they've been exposed. We're limiting the activities in the communal spaces or the community spaces.
The lounges and
lounges, the Student Life Center. They're setting up specific times for different buildings for the laundry facilities so that not everybody's trying to come in at one time. And then we'll also be looking at the areas, the Lion's Den and the dining services facility to make sure that we can socially distance and accommodate the number of students there.
What about the move-in time? I know in August it seems like everybody shows up at once and wants to move into their plans on how you're going to handle that swarm of students coming at once.
Absolutely. That Residence Life has done a great job. They've already been communicating with students. They're assigning students a time, and so the students will come in that window of time so that we don't have everyone showing up at 9 o'clock on that move-in day. They're also limiting to come in to pick up their keys and their packet and things. In the past, we've encouraged parents. We want them to be involved every step of the way, but to minimize the number of people coming in and out of the buildings and congregating in those areas, we're limiting that to students only at this time. And then the parents will still be allowed to help them move into their room and those sort of things. Residence Life also for the fall semester is limiting guests. Guests are not going to be allowed in the residence halls after the move-in time, just to minimize the number of off-campus people that we have. One of the other things that Missouri Southern has done, not student related, but we are a site for many community events and things. As of right now, Missouri Southern is not renting our facilities for the fall semester, and then we'll see what happens. We're just trying to minimize the number of outside guests that we can't control where they've been or who they've been exposed to from coming on campus and maybe creating a potential exposure.
Right, so keeping the group together here on campus.
Absolutely.
And safe. Some schools, talk about when the students come to campus, if they're from out of certain states, they have to quarantine or you have to watch. Are you monitoring where people are coming from as they return to campus, or what kind of?
Somewhat, we are. Yes, the health center. And I've got to say, our health center has done a fantastic job for a small staff. They are in communication with Freeman Hospital every day. They've worked with Mercy as well, the Joplin Health Department, Jasper County Health Department, as well as the State Health Department. They are keeping us up to speed on what's happening nationwide. Right now, definitely for international students, there is a 14-day quarantine to have them make sure that they're not picking up something on their travels. But our local health department and the state health department have also recommended that if someone is coming outside of the 48
contiguous
states, that they also quarantine as well. So we will have some students. We know we have some student athletes from Hawaii, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, in those places that even though they're still U.S. citizens, not international students, that they will be asked to quarantine before they come to campus.
Right. Now you mentioned the health center. A lot of people are interested. They're playing a very key role in monitoring the health of the students and working with students as well. So explain, their role in not only the monitoring, but perhaps the treatment or diagnosis and what's involved along those lines.
Absolutely, and it's an interesting puzzle piece, really. If people think that the health center will have all of the information for our students, as we said, less than 1,000 students live on campus, and so our other 4,200, 4,300 students live in the communities around us. And so what happens if a student has been exposed or has tested positive, the health department in their county actually takes the lead. And so many times it will be, Newton County, McDonald County, Barton County, Jasper County, calling the Joplin Health Department or working with our health center. And so they really are working with numerous health departments and agencies across the Southwest Missouri area, as well as across the state. Some of our students are coming in St. Louis, Kansas City as well. But they're doing a fantastic job. They're our health professionals, so we're relying on them. They're following the CDC and the health department guidelines. The main question we get is that, I hear someone may have had an exposure or been at church with someone that tested positive, but they're allowed to go back to work. Why did the health center say they could do that? Most of the time, unless we're actually testing and the responsible party for it here on campus, most of the time the health departments in whatever those areas will determine what the status is for those students or faculty members based on the type of exposure they had. When was the exposure? How many days? How close were you? If you and I are standing in the parking lot at Walmart and you may test positive, that doesn't necessarily mean I had a potential exposure. So it's a very complicated piece, and so that's why we definitely want to refer to the health professionals there, and they're doing a fantastic job of making sure that the campus stays as safe as possible.
So when we hear about tracing, that's really a complicated picture as well, because John Doe was here and
Absolutely.
Sue Smith was there, and how do you find out?
Absolutely. If we need to use tools to help us with contact tracing. I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, let alone who I was in contact with for the last 2 weeks. So we are encouraging people, be more conscious of where you've been over the last 2 weeks. The contact tracing, it is handled by the health department at this point, unless the cases skyrocket enough to where we assist with that. So we will talk to the students, faculty, or staff and encourage that. One of the things that our task force is looking at, and IT has done a great job of this, is a campus app that was actually developed by Creighton University with some input from Johns Hopkins University, but it was made for higher education. And it's a free downloadable app, and it actually will ask the same questions that we are asking students. You basically need to they call it self-screen, which is asking those questions in the morning. Do you have a fever? Do you have a sore throat? Do you feel ill? Or those sort of things. And then based on what you tell the app, it will prompt you either to contact the health center or contact the local health department, those sort of things. It will also help us with that contact tracing, and it keeps everyone's information separate. There's no privacy issues there. It is confidential. It will not tell me that I was in class with you if you tested positive, but it will say that I may have had a potential exposure by someone in one of my classes. And so IT is working on that, and we hope to have that rolled out and communicated to the students before the fall semester.
A lot of it sounds like the personal responsibility for people that, in the past you just roll, a student might roll out of bed and come to class, oh, I got a little scratchy throat today, don't worry about it. But really.
Absolutely, it really is, and especially in many of our majors where if you're an upper division student especially, or you're doing clinicals and those sort of things, it's vital that you're there.
Attendance counts,
Attendance counts, absolutely. But again, it is a different situation, and so we want students to take that personal responsibility. If a student doesn't feel well when they get up in the morning, we want them to reach out to their faculty and let them know, hey, I'm not feeling well, I'm not going to be there today. And we're encouraging the faculty to work with those students and let them make up whatever materials they can. If a student really is ill, or is caring for someone that's ill or has been quarantined or isolated or those things, we do encourage them not only reach out to the faculty, but reach out to the student affairs office. If a student's going to be gone more than 2 days at any given time, our office will also reach out to the faculty and encourage them to work with those students so that we make sure that we can safely take care of them while they're protecting us by staying home.
Well, and I talked to Dr. Carson in Academic Affairs about perhaps the possibilities that faculty might be facing, and sounds like the faculty side have to really be adaptable this semester as well.
It really is. We are very hopeful, and with the cases in our area, we're hoping to make it through the fall semester totally face-to-face. The faculty have been asked to be prepared if something happens and we have to go back online, and so that's another contingency for them. But looking at reduced class sizes, or you've heard the term high flex and the hybrid model, and that can be a little bit of everything. Some faculty are looking at, if it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, maybe half come on Monday, half come on Wednesday, and then it's hybrid on Friday. Some that have larger classes are looking at, I'm going to Zoom everybody, but then some of you come Monday, some come Wednesday, some come Friday, to split that up a little bit. So there's no two classes will probably have the exact same model for the fall semester.
And students will find out about this well in advance of the semester. You're not going to show up on the 17th and say, oh, this is how your class is being handled.
Absolutely. I think Dr. Carson's deadline for the faculty to submit their reports to her is August 7th, so those will be out, so we'll have at least a week there to advertise for the students and make sure that they're comfortable with that format.
Well, the health department, health center is really taking on the big responsibilities, but what about the common health problems they deal with? We do have students who come in just with other problems.
Absolutely, it is, and that's where I can't brag on our partnership enough. We have, of course, our nurse practitioner, Julie Stiles, director of the health center. We have 2 additional nurses in the health center now. We've kind of moved some staffing around, and so they're doing a phenomenal job, because COVID is on everyone's mind, but we still have the regular flu, we have allergies, we have students that just have regular illnesses.
I hurt my ankle, I need to go talk to somebody.
Absolutely. And so we're still seeing those students as well. And it has been challenging for them because if we have ill students, especially if they think they're COVID related, we keep those students separated from the other students that are just the run-of-the-mill illnesses. So the health center is doing a fantastic job with that, and they definitely have their hands full, but it will be a good semester for them.
So students might have questions, do I go to the health center to get tested for COVID? What if they feel they're not feeling well? What's the process that you envision for that?
Absolutely. Anyone that is ill that has any of the symptoms that might be related to COVID, we encourage them to reach out to the health center by phone first, because they may be able to either set you up for testing there, or depending on what the symptoms are, may have to refer you on to urgent care or the ER, depending on what it is. For students that are testing positive for COVID, they're having them use a separate entrance than the other students, and so they're trying to keep them isolated as well. They definitely are encouraging students, don't just show up at the front door of the health center without an appointment if you think you have some of the symptoms, even if it's the regular flu. We just want to be careful that we're not spreading any of that.
And underlying all of this, you have the confidentiality, like you mentioned. There's laws concerning health protection and so forth. So campus is not going to say, oh, there goes so-and-so, they have COVID. You're going to protect who has it.
Absolutely. And that's the toughest thing, because we all want to know, and we all want to know if I've had an exposure on campus and those sort of things. But due to the privacy laws, we're limited on what we can say or can't say. There are rumors this summer that we had 30-some students that had tested positive. That was not the case. Many times our students, especially in the summer, because they're off campus, it may be 2, 3, 4 weeks that a student that's in an online class off campus tested positive in their home. They're already recovered before they even notify us. Oh, by the way, I tested positive for COVID, but I'm recovered now, and those sort of things. So again, it is a moving puzzle piece that we're just trying to keep track of and provide as much assistance to those students as we can.
Well, higher education as a whole is being seen around the country with so many different approaches of how the fall semester is going. You're focusing on Missouri Southern, but are you keeping in touch with other institutions or seeing what's being done elsewhere, that type of observation?
Absolutely. We're not only looking online and in email communication with several of our listservs, but Missouri Department of Education, we have 2 different Zoom or WebEx type meetings a week. One is right now is happening on Mondays at noon with just the other vice presidents for student affairs and different members across the state. And then our Commissioner of Higher Education has one on Wednesdays at noon for presidents and administrators and really any of them that want to join in. And so there's a great deal of collaboration and sharing and information that's going back and forth between the public and private universities in the state.
You see this continuing when people return in August, that so-and-so at this school is going to be communicating and saying, here's what we're seeing on our campus and helping you.
Absolutely, yeah. Because again, the campuses are very similar, but we all have our differences. And so just sharing that information, we're trying not to create the wheel, and we're all in this together. And so it is, there may be a great idea that someone comes up with. The app that I mentioned earlier, that came from one of the other schools in the system that had seen that and shared that with the other groups. And so that was a fantastic find for us.
Right. Of course, Missouri Southern has such a big role in the Joplin area of the community, not just city of Joplin, but the region. So imagine that we got students from around the region. Students are going back to work in the region, that your ties to the regional, like you said, health departments, lawmakers, and so forth are all playing a big role as well. Absolutely.
Missouri Southern is a big player in the community, and not just the Joplin community, but Southwest Missouri, as many of our students drive from the 9 counties that surround the Joplin area. They're not only students here, but they're also employees in those businesses, and they shop in those businesses. So it has a major impact. And so having our students back on campus and in a safe but active community will be good for the region as well.
Now, earlier on, you mentioned the website. I want to make sure we show it. I think I don't know if we've shown it on the screen, but Missouri Southern website. If people we're answering some of the questions, but if they have more, what can they do? Absolutely.
Go to MSSU.edu, and at the very top of the page, there's a COVID link, and that will take you to our resources, and it has all of our information there. There are several different boxes, and you can scroll down. There are several different boxes that are available there. There are resources for students. There are resources for faculty. There are videos of the town halls that Dr. Van Galen, the new president of Missouri Southern, has done, as well as some of our staff. And so just a lot of information. We're trying to keep our students, faculty, staff, and the community updated as much as possible. It is a very fluid and changing situation. We also have frequently asked questions, and we actually received another round of questions as the campus receives questions from students, faculty or staff, or community members, parents. We're trying to address those and put those out on the web also, because we know that if one student has asked that question, there's probably a dozen others that wish they knew the answer to it but just haven't asked it yet. So we're trying to keep that as updated as possible for folks.
So communication being really important. You mentioned the rumors earlier, so communication being an important aspect.
Absolutely. Communication is going to be vital. And again, we want as much information out there. We have, about, as I said, about 10 different subcommittees to that task force for the reopening. And one of those is a communication subcommittee. And so there's probably a dozen different messages that they're working on now that need to go out before classes start for the fall semester, just as informational pieces for the students, faculty, and staff.
Well, any final tips or thoughts that you'd like to share, whether it's a student who's watching or a parent or just someone in the community that you'd like to?
The utmost premise that we're operating from is that we want a safe environment for our students, faculty, and staff. We know that face-to-face education is vital for many of our programs and services. And so if we can do that in a safe environment, that is our goal. But as we said earlier, it will take all of us to play a part in that. We want to make sure that students know that they will play a role in this, as well as the faculty, staff, and the administration. So we encourage people, if you haven't looked at the CDC guidelines, they're on our website, and again, the CDC, wear the face mask. We want to social distance and try to stay apart. Washing your hands, something as simple as that. And again, there are guidelines on there. Someone even had I think our fight song is on there. And the fight song is about the length of the time to wash your hands. And so again, we know that it's a different time. It will be very different, but we want people to feel comfortable and feel safe, but know that they have a role to play in that. And if they have any questions, there is a link on that COVID page for people to email in questions. Right. And we're happy to respond back and do what we can to answer their questions before the fall semester. And we're just looking forward to having them back on campus and seeing them, even if it is behind a mask, seeing them on campus.
Great. Darren, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me and sharing what's happening here at Missouri Southern coming up this fall.
Thank you, Judy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next time on the station. We'll see you then.